Sin Fronteras, Western New York.
This is for you, mis hermanas y hermanos.
Where you can voice your thoughts on how we live, work, and play in Western New York.
Buffalo is in a renaissance, and Latinos are a huge part of our city's growth.
We want to hear your voice.
Llámame 837-1112.
Or hit us up on Facebook 24/7, 7 days a week. Talk with Samantha and Michelle, Sin Fronteras, Western New York, every Friday at 1 on WUFO 1080 AM.
Huepa!
Presented by the Hispanic Heritage Council of Western New York, dedicated to preserving the history of Hispanics in Western New York for future generations. Sponsored by Goya. Si es Goya, tiene que ser bueno.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Both on.
You're listening to Sin Fronteras, Western New York at 1. Good afternoon, I'm Samantha Martinez.
And I'm Michelle Agosto.
Today we'll talk to attorney Les Greenbaum. If faced with a health emergency, who would make legal decisions on your behalf? Learn how to set up a healthcare proxy.
And Sin Fronteras Western New York will bring you the latest events happening in your community this weekend.
And over 200,000 Puerto Ricans have arrived in Florida since Hurricane Maria, making cities like Miami, Orlando, and Tampa their new home. Y número 8 en el Top Billboard Latino esta semana están escuchando Sensualidad, Bad Bunny, Prince Royce y J Balvin. Sin Fronteras West New York at 1 starts right now.
Drop gangs, baby. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ay, baby, tu sensualidad. Oh, 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 oh. Me tiene al borde de la locura y esto no es casualidad. Oh, oh, oh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Ay, baby, tu sensualidad. Oh, oh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ay, baby.
1. You're back on.
Sin Fronteras West New York is brought to you by our sponsor, Goya Foods. Si es Goya, tiene que ser bueno. The time is 1:04. Sin Fronteras West New York is bringing you continuing coverage of the recovery efforts in Puerto Rico. More than 200,000 Puerto Ricans have arrived in Florida since Hurricane Maria in just over 2 months. The state has set up a hurricane relief center in Miami International Airport to help those arriving settle in. Hurricane Maria pummeled Puerto Rico on September 20th, and since then families have been boarding planes to the mainland with no end in sight. Flights from the island are booked solid through the end of the year. According to the Florida Division of Emergency Management, Puerto Rican hurricane survivors are also landing in Orlando and Tampa since October 3rd. And a total of 8,000 Puerto Rican students have enrolled in Florida public schools during the same period. The largest enrollments are in Central Florida, including Orange and Osceola counties. Since the initial aftermath of the hurricane, historians are predicting a massive exodus of 750,000 Puerto Ricans from the islands to the U.S. mainland in the next 4 years. 2 former executives from the Venezuelan National Oil Company, the PDVSA, have been detained in an anti-corruption crackdown. Former President Nelson Martinez and former Minister El Julio del Pino are now in custody. Plus, 16 other arrest warrants are out for other officials. And for those not in the country, an Interpol alert will be requested. The move comes after President Nicolas Maduro announced that Manuel Quevedo will run the PDVSA in an effort to clean up corruption scandals within the oil company. More Latinas are becoming teachers and reshaping our nation's classrooms, making it the largest category of Latina professionals, followed by nursing. Data from the Department of Labor shows that Latina make up the fastest growing non-white group to be entering the teaching profession. A sociologist at UC Irvine says the growth of Latina populations in the U.S. will have a lasting cultural and intellectual impact beyond the arts, food, and celebrations. Coming up next, we'll talk to attorney Les Greenbaum. If faced with a health emergency, who would make legal decisions on your behalf? Learn how to set up a healthcare proxy. And now a message from our sponsors.
Tito, no es correcto que hagas después de tomar tu néctar Goya. Marita, niña, Benito.
Los néctares Goya son ricos, naturales y nutritivos, con más frutas que los demás. Tamarindo, pera, mango y muchos más. Saboréalos y un de tu boca surgirá. Néctares Goya, más fruta, más sabor.
Goya tiene que ser bueno.
And now we're back with our guest today, which is Les Greenbaum of the firm Gross Shuman. And we're so happy that you've come back. This is your second visit with us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have so many questions for you, Les, and I think this topic today is really important. It's about developing a health proxy or creating a health proxy. So maybe for our audience that may not understand what a health proxy is, do you mind kind of defining what that is?
Sure. A healthcare proxy appoints an agent to make healthcare decisions for you. And it's not only something that can be used in an emergency, but it is something that, can be relied on if there may be, a temporary disability, or over time, if the person has become aged and suffers from some dementia and can no longer understand what's being explained to them about their medical condition or what their medical needs are. So the healthcare proxy is a form of agency where it appoints an agent to make healthcare decisions. Now, typically, it affords that agent wide discretion to make decisions in a case where a person can't make healthcare decisions for themselves. So, in an emergency, if a doctor is recommending a procedure and the person who needs the procedure is unconscious, it makes it simpler if they have designated someone to make this decision for them ahead of time. That way, you don't have, one brother arguing, yes, get the procedure, and one sister arguing, no, this way there's an agent who's been appointed who can make that decision. Now, a healthcare proxy is a very powerful instrument. It, as I said, affords wide discretion to make decisions about not only procedures, but drugs that would be administered, about facilities, if someone needs to go for rehab to a facility, or if they may need to go to assisted living or skilled nursing. Typically, the healthcare proxy would be authorized to make those determinations, dealing with the healthcare insurance companies or Medicare or Medicaid. And most importantly, the healthcare proxy, the person that's appointed, can make decisions on withholding care. If someone has reached a point in their life or in their illness where they just need to be administered some drugs for their comfort, and if there are decisions that need to be made about intubation or do not resuscitate or feeding tubes, this person who is appointed as the healthcare agent can make those decisions on behalf of a person who is unable to make those decisions themselves.
So if you have any questions about healthcare proxies, please call. The lines are open at 837-1112, and Les would be happy to answer a question that you may have. Now, healthcare proxies are really serious. A lot of people don't want to touch them. They're kind of solemn in some ways because you're thinking of, the ultimate, ending. But I just have a real quick question. So who is best to make an agent? So a mom has lots of children or family, and they're just making this decision who is going to be in charge of their health care proxy if they cannot make decisions themselves. How would you suggest someone go about making that decision? Who would be in charge of that health care proxy?
Well, some people just reach for the oldest son, or if it happens to be mom, she may reach for the oldest daughter because, they have the most confidence in them. But there may be a younger son who's a doctor, or there may be a younger daughter who's a nurse or a nurse practitioner, and that may be, a better person who's better suited. I mean, everyone has to make this decision for themselves, and normally we do this as part of a broader estate plan, where you're thinking about a will, or where you're thinking about a healthcare proxy, and where you're maybe thinking about a power of attorney, someone to handle your business affairs if you're unable to do so. So it's part of a broader plan, and typically you should appoint someone who you think is going to make good decisions for you, because you're investing them with a lot of discretion. Now, most healthcare proxy forms, including the one we use in our law firm, they do have some specific directions as well, and people take different views. There are some people that if they're suffering from, an illness which is going to lead to, their ultimate demise, some people say, okay, if that happens, I want to be kept alive as long as possible. I want all artificial means used. If that doesn't work, I want you to cut off my head and freeze it and bring me back to life when they find a cure for what's killing me. That's about maybe 1% of the people that we see every year. The other 99% of the people who see us, want their families to understand and that dying is part of the living process, and that if they're suffering from a debilitating illness or dementia and lots of other chronic illness, that there is no point in intubating them. There is no point in putting in a feeding tube, because then the decision is, well, how do you take that out? And that becomes much more difficult. So what healthcare proxies do is it prompts a discussion amongst family members about what people's goals are, what their philosophies really are, and it helps them to come to a decision, and as part of that process they can designate their proxy, their agent who they want to act on their behalf, and they can also designate a successor agent. And you can designate two people if you want two people to make that decision. Everyone does it a little bit differently, and we try and be flexible and guide people on what may be best for them, because it's a very individualized decision.
Thank you so much, Les, for coming on our show. I always love having you on. Last month he came on and he talked about how to teach us on how to form our own small businesses. This is Samantha speaking on the air. And now, Les, I just wanted to ask you, let's paint a scenario. Perhaps this is too far-fetched, but I could see it happening in lifetime. So let's say that the patient, they said that they want a do not resuscitate. Now, then after a healthcare proxy was formed, and let's say it's the oldest son, what have you, they're the healthcare proxy, and do they have the legal right to actually override that?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes a DNR, or do not resuscitate order, may be there in the chart that was done on admission, and the circumstances have changed. And typically, these decisions are made in consultation with the medical team in any event. But if there's a dispute over what should be done, about mom, I mean, and I see this frequently in my practice where, someone has been given the power to make these decisions, and they've decided that, mom should go into a nursing home. She can't stay at home anymore by herself, and we really need to move her to a safer environment. And there might be another sibling who's saying, no, mom is okay at home. When I see her on Thursday afternoons, she seems fine. So by giving the power to someone, by the person who is now needing assistance expressing their wishes and making their directions as clear as possible, it helps to settle those kinds of issues when they arise in a family. And if the dispute somehow should find its way into a court, a court or a judge is going to give a lot of thought before they turn aside what the person themselves has decided they want in terms of care.
When does that healthcare proxy, when does that activate? Is it when the patient is mentally incapacitated? When does that take place, a change of hands?
Well, first of all, the medical team is going to look to the person themselves to see if they can make decisions and ask them first. If there seems to be some issue, whether it's dementia or some level of pain that requires pain medications that cloud judgment, then they may look to the healthcare proxy. And if there is no healthcare proxy, then they look to the family or the next of kin. And unfortunately, for some people, there isn't much family or there isn't next of kin. So even for those who are out there in the world and don't have a lot of family, it's good to have a healthcare proxy in place to designate the person that you have confidence in to make good decisions for you.
So you mentioned the DNR, and I know there are other different aspects to a living will, let's say, or to, I believe there's something called a MOLST. Can you explain what those are, a medical order for life-sustaining treatment? There's all these pieces that seem to work with the healthcare proxy.
Well, the MOLST is typically something that the healthcare team would put in place if they don't know what the person's own directions are. And there are statutory forms in New York, and they vary from state to state. But it's a medical order for life-sustaining treatment, and sometimes it's a medical order for withholding life-sustaining treatment if the person really does not have any real chance of recovery and having a good quality of life. But the advantage of the healthcare proxy is that every individual gets to set the direction and let their family know and their agent know how it is that they would like their care to proceed if they're unable to make those decisions for themselves. Now, another form that's frequently used and part of the estate planning process that we use is a power of attorney. And a power of attorney is a very powerful instrument as well. And there are some overlaps where it may come to designating a power of attorney to deal with insurance matters or banking matters or even healthcare insurance matters. But powers of attorney are usually for things like banking, real estate transactions, claims, things that are more on the business side rather than on the personal and medical side. So typically someone would need both types of instruments. One major difference between them is that when you appoint a healthcare proxy, the person you appoint as your agent doesn't have to sign anything or acknowledge that they are willing to be your healthcare proxy and act as your agent. Whereas with a power of attorney, where there are some severe financial implications involved, the power of attorney normally would need to sign off and acknowledge that he's or she has been advised that what these responsibilities are and that they are responsible to act in a way that benefits the person who's appointed them, not themselves, things of that nature.
Do you suggest that that you have a different agent for all of these different pieces of an estate plan? How do you suggest for people to go through this?
It varies
Okay.
from individual to individual. Many times, the person who is appointed as healthcare proxy is also the power of attorney, may also be designated as the executor in the will, if you're doing a will. And I recommend that most people do a will, particularly if they own real estate or if they have any significant assets at all. But in terms of who you appoint, again, there may be someone in the family who's got more financial savvy and is better at handling money, and there may be someone in the family who's more sensitive to medical issues. And what a person does and who they appoints, varies from family to family.
Well, thank you so much for clarifying that. If you can just talk a little bit more briefly about the difference of the will and the importance of a healthcare proxy. Some people might have the two confused.
Healthcare proxy is solely to designate someone to act as an agent in dealing with medical providers, medical insurance, allowing your medical information to be shared for various types of purposes. A will, on the other hand, only becomes an instrument that has legal force and effect when you die, and after a court has determined that that will should be admitted to probate. And that determines how the property in your estate will be distributed to your heirs or the other persons who you designate in that instrument to receive your property following your death. So they're different instruments for different purposes. The healthcare proxy is used when you're alive. The will is something that comes into play after you pass.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. A time like this that could be so hard and emotional for family members, this is something that's very important to get these ducks in a row before such events happen.
Yeah, and it's important not only for elderly people who are, have more yesterdays than tomorrows, but it's a good idea for young people to have these instruments in place as well. And, we're happy to provide that help to young and old.
Well, thank you so much, Les, for coming back and visiting us again, and we hope to have you back once more.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to come back.
When we come back, Sin Fronteras West New York will bring you the very latest happening this week in your area. And now a word from our sponsors.
My wife would know as
Well, Wepa, happy first day of December, everyone. I'd like to share the next community events with you. Our first one is our 2017 Canal Side Holiday Celebration and Tree Lighting, taking place on Canal Side today, December 1st from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m. This is a free, family-friendly event taking place at the ICE at Canal Side, not far from the Metro Rail, so it's easy to get to. This year's events will include a tree lighting with Santa Claus, I love Santa, free children's activities including a visit with Santa Claus, food trucks, and live entertainment. There will also be an open skate. Cost is free for ages 5 and under. And for more information, go to www.canalsidebuffalo.com. Our good friends from Raíces Theater Company is presenting a new show called Desde el Puente, Christmas Edition, a bilingual one-act play festival, which starts their run today through December 17th. They will have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evening shows with tickets starting at $20. On Thursdays, they will also host Pay What You Want productions, so bring the family. For more information, call 716-381-9333 or go to www.raicestheatercompany.com. And lastly, Antonia Pantoja School number 18 is hosting a school garage sale on Friday, December 20th through the 21st, all day, located at 750 West Avenue. They will be selling gently used items for $1 each that can be used as a holiday present for family and friends. There will be toys, home decor, tools, sporting equipment, and more. For more information on the garage sale or how you can help, contact Tracy Cotter at tcotter@buffaloschools.org. Wepa, there it is.
Thank you for joining us on Sin Fronteras West New York every Friday at 1. Remember, you can always catch Sin Fronteras West New York online and on our Facebook page whenever you want, all the time, 24/7. And if you enjoyed listening to attorney Les Greenbaum, you can catch him next month. We'll hear talk about accidents and no fault. How do you prepare yourself if you find yourself in such an incident? Well, he'll have the legal matters explained for you on next month's show. And now, introducing the song of the evening.
It's Gingere, and I forgot the title of the Bendito. I messed up. I forgot the name of the guy, but I'll put that on YouTube, and I'll make sure it's on Facebook. Gingere, enjoy. Adios.
Qué bueno usted toca la bomba. De ese ritmo la llave la tiene usted.
Qué bueno te toca
you. I will find the ginger ale. I know it. I should know this, but I don't know it. I'll get to it. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, Les.
Okay, bye-bye.
He said okay.
See you.
Qué bueno usted toca la bomba de ese ritmo.